In a stunning development that has captured the attention of millions of Brazilians, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has just announced potentially significant changes to the 13th salary payment system for 2025, sending shockwaves through the country's workforce and economic sectors. This traditional year-end bonus, a cornerstone of Brazilian labor rights, may face unprecedented modifications that could affect how and when workers receive this crucial supplemental income. The announcement comes at a time when economic pressures continue to challenge the administration's fiscal policies, raising questions about the sustainability of traditional payment schedules that Brazilians have come to rely upon. The 13th salary, known locally as the 13º Salário, has been a guaranteed right for Brazilian workers since its establishment in 1962, serving as an essential financial boost typically distributed at the end of the year. Under normal circumstances, employers must pay half of this bonus by November 30th and the remaining half by December 20th, providing millions of families with additional funds during the holiday season. However, President Lula's recent announcement suggests that this well-established timeline may be subject to significant adjustments in the coming year, with early payments potentially at risk as the government grapples with complex economic realities. Economic analysts are already weighing in on the potential implications of these changes, with some suggesting that delaying or restructuring the 13th salary payments could be part of a broader strategy to address Brazil's fiscal challenges. The country continues to navigate post-pandemic recovery while confronting inflation concerns and attempting to maintain stable economic growth. Government officials close to the president have indicated that these modifications aim to ensure long-term sustainability of worker benefits rather than eliminating them altogether. Though this has done little to quell the anxiety spreading among Brazil's working class, who depend on the predictability of these payments for annual financial planning. For many Brazilian families, the 13th salary represents much more than just additional income. It stands as a critical financial resource that helps manage year-end expenses, holiday costs, and often serves as a means to pay down accumulated debt before entering a new year. Any disruption to this system could have far-reaching consequences for household budgets, consumer spending patterns, and even broader economic indicators as retail sectors typically experience significant boosts during the disbursement periods of these payments. The uncertainty surrounding these potential changes has already sparked debates about worker rights, economic necessity, and the balance between fiscal responsibility and social welfare commitments. Labor unions across Brazil have responded swiftly to the announcement, with many expressing concern about what they perceive as a potential erosion of worker rights. Representatives from major union confederations have scheduled emergency meetings to discuss response strategies and potentially organize demonstrations if the proposed changes are deemed too detrimental to worker interests. Some union leaders have already indicated their willingness to engage in constructive dialogue with the administration, provided that any modifications to the 13th salary system maintain its fundamental value to workers while addressing legitimate economic concerns facing the country. Financial planning experts are advising Brazilian workers to prepare for potential disruptions to their expected year-end bonuses, suggesting that families may need to adjust budgets and expectations for the 2025 holiday season. Those who typically rely on the 13th salary for major purchases, debt repayment, or seasonal expenses are being counseled to develop alternative financial strategies in the event that payments are delayed or restructured. This precautionary approach reflects the uncertainty surrounding the specifics of the proposed changes, which remain somewhat ambiguous pending further clarification from government officials and relevant regulatory bodies. The timing of President Lula's announcement has raised eyebrows among political analysts, who note that major changes to popular worker benefits typically face significant scrutiny and are rarely announced without extensive preparation of public opinion. Some speculate that economic indicators may have necessitated more immediate action, while others suggest that the early announcement may be designed to provide adequate time for both employers and employees to adjust to the new system before its implementation in 2025. Regardless of the reasoning, the announcement has certainly succeeded in capturing public attention and generating substantial discourse about Brazil's economic priorities and labor policies. Market responses to the announcement have been mixed, with some sectors experiencing minor fluctuations as investors attempt to predict the potential impact on consumer spending patterns and overall economic activity. Retail associations have expressed particular concern given that the traditional 13th salary payment schedule has historically coincided with increased consumer activity during the holiday shopping season. Any significant delay or restructuring of these payments could potentially disrupt established business cycles and force adjustments in inventory management, marketing strategies, and sales projections for businesses that rely heavily on year-end consumer spending. Historical context provides important perspective on the significance of any changes to the 13th salary system. Throughout its nearly six-decade history, this benefit has remained relatively unchanged in its fundamental structure, surviving numerous economic crises, political transitions, and regulatory reforms. This stability has contributed to its status as not merely a legal obligation, but a deeply embedded social expectation among Brazilian workers. Previous attempts to modify aspects of this benefit have often faced substantial resistance, highlighting the political sensitivity surrounding any adjustments to what many consider an inviolable worker right. International observers are monitoring these developments with interest, particularly as Brazil's approach to labor rights and economic policy often influences trends throughout Latin America. Some economic analysts from international financial institutions have cautiously supported the potential for reform, suggesting that thoughtful modifications to payment structures could contribute to greater fiscal sustainability without necessarily diminishing the overall value provided to workers. Others, particularly those aligned with labor advocacy organizations, have expressed concern about what they perceive as a potential weakening of established worker protections in response to economic pressures. The legal framework surrounding the 13th salary is complex, with constitutional protections and established labor laws potentially limiting the scope of changes that can be implemented without legislative action. Constitutional scholars have begun analyzing the announcement, with some suggesting that certain modifications might require not only executive action, but also congressional approval, or potentially even constitutional amendments depending on their nature. This legal complexity adds another layer of uncertainty to the situation, as the viability and timeline for implementation may be influenced by judicial and legislative processes beyond the immediate control of the executive branch. For Brazil's vast informal economy, which employs millions of workers without formal contracts or guaranteed benefits, the implications of these changes remain particularly unclear. While the 13th salary legally applies only to formally registered employees, changes to the system could have indirect effects on informal compensation practices and seasonal economic patterns that impact workers across all sectors. This highlights the challenge of implementing economic reforms in a country with significant labor market segmentation and varying levels of regulatory compliance across different regions and industries. The announcement comes at a time when Brazil continues to face complex economic challenges, including persistent inequality, regional development disparities, and the need for sustainable growth policies that can address both immediate needs and long-term strategic objectives. Critics of the proposed changes argue that adjustments to worker benefits represent a misplaced priority, suggesting that fiscal challenges should be addressed through other means, such as tax reform, combating evasion, or reducing unnecessary government expenditures. Supporters counter that all aspects of economic policy must be evaluated for sustainability and efficiency, including long-established benefit systems that may benefit from modernization. Small and medium-sized enterprises have expressed particular concern about how changes to the payment schedule might affect their cash flow management and operational planning. For these businesses, which often operate with limited financial reserves, the obligation to provide 13th salary payments already represents a significant annual expense that requires careful budgeting and preparation. Any adjustments to the timing or structure of these payments could introduce additional complexity to their financial planning processes, potentially creating challenges for businesses already navigating tight margins and competitive market conditions.